I restarted Arcane, and this time the brain rot got me for real. Hi, welcome to the video, by the way. If you're new here, I'm Lee. I make art, and I'm currently focusing on building up a body of work that represents me as an artist. And as you can see on the screen right now, this week, or actually, to be completely honest, it was the last week of March, and you're probably watching this in May. Let's just not talk about that. I was working on an illustration of Victor from Arcane, and I didn't really like Arcane the first time I watched it back in July of 2024, which I'm always scared to confess in art spaces because everyone seems to love it so much. I thought the animation was amazing and the visual style was especially groundbreaking, but I didn't really connect with the characters and the story didn't grip me either. That said, I've been feeling a lot of FOMO about not liking it, especially with it being on a wave of hype after the second season has come out. And when I see artists collectively enjoying media on the internet, I can't help but want to be a part of it. And I think it's natural. So I saw how cool the art book was, and I never denied how mad Arcane's art is, by the way. I decided to take the art book from the library, because whether you like the show or not, it is impossible to resist a good art book in my opinion. And when I brought it home and started flicking through the pages, something kind of clicked in my brain, and I don't know what it was about it. Maybe the reminder of stunning visuals or incredible environment art, or just seeing how much care was put into making of the show and realizing how many people were involved in the process, but it really made me want to give Arcane another go. So I started watching it the same day I got the art book, and I'm enjoying it so much more now. The immediate and apparent Victor brain rot being the evidence to that. I think a big part of it is just being at a very different point in my art journey now compared to where I was back when I first watched it. And it's only been around 6 or 7 months, but a lot has changed. When I watched the first season in July of last year, I had just moved to the US, so it goes without saying that mentally I was in a very weird place. Moving countries is no joke. I couldn't really focus on the show and take it in properly, I don't think. But more importantly, I was just getting back into art. I had been taking art seriously with a capital S for about a year at that point, but I had to take a detour in spring, summer to focus on my job and immigration stuff, so I didn't draw much at all. And in July, I still felt really disconnected from my art practice. I was so detached from art as a whole that I couldn't focus on the visual side of anything, really. A lot has changed since then. I draw pretty much every day now, and my art has become my #1 priority. My skills have grown a lot, and I finally started working with color and familiarizing myself with how lighting works and how to paint it. Generally, not a day goes by without me drawing, or at the very least looking at the other artists' works. So I think now my eyes are much more trained to look for the beauty in color, textures, compositions, and other things, which in Arcane are plenty. And I think this is the main reason why I'm enjoying the show so much this time. Along with that, I'm just in a very different, better place mentally, I think. So I'm actually able to follow the story and feel more connected to the characters. I've just finished the first season, but I still wouldn't call it my favorite show of all time. I think there's just something about it that isn't to my taste, which is completely normal. I just wish I knew what it was. I really, really want to love the show as much as everyone else, which is why I'm so curious as to what it is that's preventing me from it. Anyway, the jayvik brain rot still got me, so I am satisfied. And speaking of jayvik, the illustration I'm working on that you're seeing on the screen right now, I had such a good time with. I started and finished it within 1 week, which is a big achievement for me, because as someone who hasn't completed many pieces, I don't really have the mileage of going through all of the stages of an artwork. So subsequently, my process can be very slow and unstructured. I always introduce myself as an artist who's working on building up a body of work, and that is because despite drawing my entire life, I really don't have like any portfolio pieces or finished illustrations with backgrounds, like characters in an environment or something like that. I don't really know how that happened, probably because for the longest time I was very reluctant to get out of my comfort zone of making inconsequential sketches. But now that I'm taking art seriously and want to make it my career, I want to have finished artworks to show for myself. And I have to preface that you don't need to have finished illustrations to call yourself an artist. You don't have to draw backgrounds for your characters to call your artworks finished. Each artist defines what their art is supposed to look like for themselves, and each artist is free to make their own choice of what they want to see in their portfolio, or if they want a portfolio at all. For me personally, I am interested in making illustrations with backgrounds, in putting characters in an environment, and telling a story this way. I also want to start drawing comics someday, so being able to craft a full scene is important to me. I have a certain vision of what I want my art and my career to be, and I'm slowly moving towards it. And this illustration of Victor, done entirely in just a couple of days, is a significant milestone for me. It started off as a doodle in the margin of my digital notebook, very non-committal. I was poking at my notes while watching the first 3 episodes of Arcane, and it was just a way to capture what was happening, what I was engaging with, and what I was enjoying in that moment. I just had an image of Victor's head in my mind's eye, surrounded by elements from the show that were symbolic to his story, like the gemstone, the cogwheel, and what initially was supposed to be Victor's eye, but I later changed it to Jace's for reasons. And I really like this kind of art, something a little bit abstract that feels serene, almost like a moment captured in time, but it still holds something much bigger and complex, like a feeling, a mood, a story. And it's hard to describe, but whenever I make something like this, I'm always in a very grounded and content state of mind, and I think it gets reflected in the drawings. I thought the doodle came out very nice. I was kind of surprised. It's honestly just the napkin sketch effect. When you draw something with no stakes and expectations, absent-mindedly, out of pure joy or contentment, and it turns out way too good. Like 10 times better than the stuff you worked extremely hard on. But I decided to take it further and make an illustration out of it. I sort of developed this line art based style where if I have a very solid sketch, I'll take a pencil brush and like outline the lines and fill them in for line art. It sounds extremely tedious and like it takes forever, and yep, it certainly isn't fast, but the process is very straightforward and satisfying for me, especially when the initial sketch took only a couple passes and you don't need to change anything about it, just make the line art. I started working on a different illustration a couple of weeks prior. I'll put the work in progress screenshot up on screen, I think. And that was when I kind of solidified this style and figured out a way to get the exact look that I wanted with the line art. I just really like the texture that comes out. If you just use the pencil brush at a bigger size, the texture will be very different, as opposed to like filling in the outlines and like scratching them in. I don't know, I just think the effect is worth it. And I recently realized that I used a very similar technique, if I can call it that, a while back for a different illustration that I also really liked and like to this day. But back then, I thought that it was too tedious and gave inconsistent results. And well, I accidentally came full circle after gradually refining it all these months without even noticing. And as for someone who just can't stop micromanaging and controlling every aspect of my growth, this is a very good lesson in how trusting the process can lead to very good results, especially in the long term. There is a place of balance between being intentional with your art practice and letting yourself wander around with curiosity while making interesting discoveries. And I think with this artwork, I have gotten much closer to finding that balance for myself. I also did a couple different tries at coloring it. The first one was a bit too much in my opinion. It was a good opportunity to practice some rendering, and I think I learned a lot while doing it, but it just didn't fit the piece, or rather my vision of the piece, and it overpowered the line art. Now, as it may already have gotten obvious, the line art is my darling. And the star of the show. So I took a pause and stepped away from the artwork to collect some references, just a couple, to see where I can take this artwork. I think best in writing, so I pulled together a page in my journal about it, and eventually I decided to go with very loose watercolors on my second attempt, and I liked it a lot better. This watercolor brush that I'm using is by Max Packs, and it's also something I've been using on and off for months now. So it's nice to realize that I finally familiarized familiarized myself with it enough to get the results that I want, and consistently. I wasn't sure what to do for the background, but I knew leaving it white made the piece feel very empty. A solid color wouldn't work because Jace's eye is sort of floating in space without any defined edges, so it will just get lost. And eventually I decided to do a checkered pattern, and it worked very well in my opinion. I even took it to use in one of my older pieces afterwards. Overall, I think this illustration was a catalyst of how well March went for me. I didn't make many artworks, but I've come to a lot of very important discoveries and realizations. This entire time, I was very confused about my art process. It felt inconsistent and not reliable enough to commit to making finished pieces. Spoiler alert, to find your process, you have to work on the pieces you want to make. But it can also be done with a less intimidating approach, I think. Slowly crawling out of your comfort zone and taking things a couple steps further every time. When done out of place of genuine curiosity and joy, it all eventually comes together into a familiar process with trusted tools that you can lean back on. And giving yourself space to experiment and wander around is crucial in my opinion. But yeah, this March I may not have made many pieces, but I've discovered or solidified my style and process that feels natural and flexible. Well, two styles really, but I can't fit all of this into just one video. Anyway, I feel a lot of confidence now, and even though I know I have ways to go in acquiring a lot of skills and getting the mileage, I feel somewhat established. Like from now on, it's really about building up a body of work instead of being lost and disoriented. Seriously though, it might feel disorienting, yeah, but if I could give one advice to myself from the past, it will be to look for joy in exploration and not be too stressed about having to commit to a certain process or style. Because again, with genuine curiosity and a little bit of intentionality, your process will inevitably find you, and it will feel natural and give you confidence. You have to trust yourself to do what you're passionate about, to do what's good for you without micromanagement and control. You have to trust yourself to pick up work after rest because you care about it. And you have to trust yourself to wander around and pick up things that resonate with you, that feel natural, and that together make up a unique image of who you are through your art. Thank you for watching. I hope it was fun. I can never say goodbyes in videos, but I hope to see you in another video very soon. Take care.